We all heard a version of this at some point in our lives. Work hard and success will come by itself. But then there is this number that completely breaks my mind. According to the World Bank, in Uganda every year 700,000 youths are ready to join the workforce. But then there are only 75,000 new jobs that get created each year. So when we try to understand what that means, just think about your friends and how that would be if only 1 in 9 would find a job after they finish their education, no matter how hard they try. But why is this happening? And what is this all about?
Like I, for one, I like nature. So in liking nature, you know, when you plant something, like when you plant your own food and eat it, it's sweeter than something that you buy from the market.
This is Abdallah, a university student in Kampala, and this is his story of how his love for nature changed the path of his life to create a job for himself.
All along I've been trying out farming, but it has been just for domestic. Maybe you plant something, you eat, but I didn't know that on a smaller scale you can do farming and still have something to sell as well as something to eat.
And Abdallah embodies 2 topics we want to explore: youth employment and resilience. We'll come back to Abdallah a little bit later, but to understand the situation, we have to look at one big factor, and that is urbanization. To understand why this matters, there is a very simple factor that is relevant. More than half of the people migrating to the cities do that in search for work. And then there is a second number that explains the root of many of those problems. A lot of people who migrate to cities like Kampala in hope for a brighter future end in the informal settlements. Already now, 60% of the urban population live in informal settlements, so a place that often lacks access to basic infrastructure. Most people living here have no work or at least very low income. And what that means is, combined with like a low level of education, is that creating your own job opportunities or bringing your ideas to life often is almost impossible. And those areas are most of the time very densely populated, massively vulnerable to environmental threats like flooding, heat waves, and with little space for people. And this is where we come back to Abdallah and what he did with his urban gardens.
So, in that way of loving nature, I was inspired again with NAC and head, like when they brought us into those parliaments we discussed. So I was inspired in that way, and that what could pull me out is I was like, where am I going to get the money if I sacrifice all my time in the garden? They told me, no, you can still stay in the garden, but it can be your source of income still. It can be a way of, maybe you take your leisure time in the garden, but gaining everything from there. So that inspired me.
What Abdallah mentions here is an initiative to create green spaces all over the informal settlements, the so-called K-zones in Kampala. From the smallest corners to house walls to larger green spaces like Abdallah's space. It is a measure to create resilience and income opportunities and trying to adapt to the changing climate. Basically, one garden at a time.
I wanted by the end of this year be able to buy myself this without requesting it from parents, and I'm able to buy it by myself. I feel happy. I know, yeah, now I've reached a step. Whenever I reach a step whereby I'm buying myself books, I don't need to request maybe the parents, and it's out of my effort, I feel happy. Yeah, that's the change I was talking about.
And while this might feel like a small impact, one might say, it is a win-win for the communities. And with currently hundreds following his path, it's changing the basis for the community's resilience and the possibilities for self-employment.
Reducing a burden, so that's the way it makes me happy. Whenever I see that I'm carrying my own cross and I'm able to maybe to do at least something for myself, that's the way it makes me happy.